and welcome back to AR77. What more of a reason do I need to make a new video than to review and have a really detailed look at a brand new pistol on the market, the Colt 1911 Classic by Umarex. This is, as far as I'm aware, a KWC 1911, my favourite type of replica 1911 airgun that's on the market. You'll know if you're a fan of the channel that I'm a big fan of 1911s, and in particular the ones manufactured by KWC. So without further ado, let's have a look in the box, see what you get, and then we'll move on to the pistol itself and we'll have a really detailed look around it. Can't promise it's going to be a short video. If you only want a little look at a 1911, I'm afraid this isn't perhaps the channel for you. If you want an in-depth look at a 1911 style pistol, replica pistol that is, this is the place for you. So get comfy, get yourself a brew, and let's get into it. So it comes in this lovely cardboard box, much like a lot of the other Umarex replicas. The 92A1 comes in a similar sort of style box. The Colt 1911 Special Combat comes in a similar box. I quite like them, better than the sort of the plastic wrapped ones, a sort of what do they call it, like a clamshell or something like that. So decent enough cardboard box, but I'll probably keep the box to one side and keep this in either a soft case or a hard case, perhaps with a spare mag. But nevertheless, let's get into it. So we'll open the box, and we have our manual there, detailed manual on how it all operates and so forth, how the safety works, how to load the CO2. It is a CO2 powered gun, 4.5mm BB shooter, or .177 caliber if you prefer. It is full metal and it is a full function replica. You've got a bit of packaging there. Let's move him out of the way. Under here, get a bit more Umarex kind of bump, and you get your kind of Allen key. So I'll move all of that out of the way and let's focus on the star of the show, the Umarex Colt 1911 Classic. Now I'm going to take a punt and say this is a replica of the kind of 70s series, what you would call the 70s series 1911s. If you go onto the Colt website, you can see this model, the 1911 Classic. I think it's in stainless steel. They call it the SS, the stainless steel, but all the markings and things tally up with what this gun looks like. It's really nice, has some kind of classic details about it, like the double diamonds in the grip there, the nice classic shape, none of your fancy rails. It's a classic. I'm going to use that word quite a lot, I think, during this review. It is a classic 1911 style pistol, and I really like that. I like the fact that there's no bells and whistles, but what it does very well. It's a design classic at the end of the day. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it, in my opinion. Let's have a bit of a walk around of this pistol then. So at the front here, we've got a nice recessed barrel there. The actual barrel inside there isn't brass by the looks of things. If we look at the Remington, this is the sort of the A1, that's got a brass barrel, and most of the other KWC 1911 replicas that I have also do. This one's slightly different, and that gives us a bit of a window into this pistol, because it does a lot of things the same way as previous incarnations in replica airguns when it comes to 1911s, and it does a few things differently, but I'll get into that a little bit later on. The front sight then is kind of arced, I would call it. Very, very straightforward kind of front sight there. Nothing really much to talk about. No white dots or anything like that, and I'm happy with that. It's slightly different to the... I've got the A1 here, the Remington, because it's a very similar pistol. I know this is kind of a more traditional, just 1911, and this is specifically an A1. We have that sort of... what do you call it, extended sort of mainspring housing, if you will. But they're very similar, as you can see. They're very similar kind of pistols, and obviously because they're both KWC, they're made in a very similar way. You'll see here with this sight though, it kind of arches up and then it's just notched a little bit. You've got a little bit of a flat surface there on the Remington 1911 RAC, whereas with the Colt Classic, It just goes all the way over like that. So these are little details that if you are a replica collector, you might want to know. Just so that you don't look at it and think, that's exactly like another gun that I've already got. There are subtle, but I think significant differences. Okay, so down this left-hand side, we've got all the appropriate Colt sort of branding and markings, albeit they are in kind of white. I suppose you'd call that kind of laser etched or something like that, I suppose. I wish they were kind of cut out, you know, kind of actually sort of etched in into the pistol itself. If I show you bring another 1911 out. I've only got 3 on the table today, but they're 3 specific ones for specific reasons. If you look at the SIG 1911 there, that's actually cut into the slide, and I much prefer that. Even if it's white writing, if it's like that, you can find ways of filling that in, which are pretty straightforward. But nevertheless, I'd much rather it had that writing and it says Colt than says anything else. At least it's an actually authentic brand. It's a gun brand. I'm waffling again. Yeah, so it's got all that. It's got the little detail here, the sort of slide catch here, the little notch there is a little bit longer than the one you see on the Remington. A little subtle change there. I'm not sure if that's true on the real steel itself. In fact, while we're talking about it, I'll put that there, and I'll just I'll put your picture up of the real steel here. You've got kind of one side of it here. That's the left-hand side, and you can see it's a pretty accurate replica at that point. If I then do something like that, I can show you the other side of the pistol around and about here. I do really like on the sort of the photo there that I'm showing you, I like that kind of stainless barrel, which makes me think I'd quite like to change this barrel out and put a stainless one in, or maybe polish it down or something like that, because I do think that's a nice look and it kind of pops quite nicely. Let's get rid of that photo then and get this back down on the table for your enjoyment. Again, what I would call traditional classic lines. There's no front slide serrations, which is as a personal preference, I prefer. I quite like that. I think it looks nice and clean at the front end of the pistol. And actually, when I'm using my guns, when I'm shooting, I never really used front slide serrations anyway. So when they appear on a more modern replica, like the SIG, like the Emperor Scorpion, I like the fact that they're there because it makes it an accurate replica. But in terms of 1911 styling, I prefer those clean lines without those front slide serrations. The vertical slide serrations at the rear, as per the real steel, are more like those on a classic 1911. More modern ones had, of course, the sort of broader and kind of angled rear slide serrations, like on the Emperor Scorpion there, and plenty other more modern 1911s. The We the People is another example. I know it's another SIG, but it's a more traditionally shaped or styled 1911, albeit it's got some sort of bespoke elements. But even that has the broader kind of angled rear slide serrations. I prefer the ones on this Colt Classic. Now, one difference that I noticed here when I first got the pistol and I was racking the slide is, there's a lovely sound for you. These serrations, I think, feel, I've got a bit of oil there, feel like they are somewhat recessed into the slide. You can see almost the sort of the dip as the serrations are there, so they don't come quite flush with the slide. There's a definite sort of indent there, which I don't think is the case on the A1. No, it just seems to follow the same line, but there's a very clear indent here, and I actually think it's quite a good thing. It means that you've got a really firm hold when you're racking the slide. It feels quite nice, actually. It's something that is a minute detail that you might not notice, but it really does feel good when you rack the slide. It really gives you a firm purchase on the slide there. At the rear of the left-hand side, you've got a really nice kind of safety just on the left hand side here, kind of arched again, different to the more traditional small kind of latch there on the A1. I quite like that arc there. It echoes the styling of that front sight post there. Or am I thinking a bit too much about this? Probably am. Gives a nice reassuring click when you engage the safety. It clicks up there really nicely. It's the most kind of, what's the word, purposeful I've come across, especially from these KWC 1911s. And I also like the fact that although it engages with a firm click, it's not a challenge to disengage. It comes away from safe nice and easily. When if you wanted to, I don't know, practice kind of drawing from a holster, if you were to practice carrying it, for people around the world who use these kind of replica air guns as training tools when they're doing the drills or practicing drawing from holster, a lot of you might carry your 1911 in this condition, kind of cocked and locked, if you will, and you want to practice drawing from holster and disengaging that safety before going into action, if you will. And it comes away nice and easily, that safety. It clicks on nice and firmly, but it comes off. There's no real effort, although it's not just going to slip off safe. It's a nicely engineered piece, I would say. Also, we have a really nice little red dot there showing us this is ready to fire. Nice little details. Again, doesn't change the fact that it's a subtle looking pistol, a modern pistol, but harking back to really classic elements of the 1911 design. Mag release, pretty standard fare, circular, functional. Let's put a magazine in here and see how that works. Yeah, doesn't spring it out necessarily, but it releases, and gravity brings that magazine out nice and easily. What else do I need to tell you about the left hand side? Well, here's a novelty for you: wood grips. Actual wood grips. You can smell that it's wood. Really nice touch, Umarex. Why couldn't you have done that on the Colt Python? If you'd have done that on the Colt Python, that would have been I would have been even fonder of another lovely replica from the collection. But I guess, that means you could perhaps stain these grips if you preferred a slightly different colour, if you wanted a deeper sort of feel to that, or treat them somehow. It's up to you. It's your choice. On the top there, pretty standard, elegant, smooth-looking kind of slide top, classic 1911. Have I really just said that again? Yeah. A cut-out ejection port. And a nice bit of detail here with the sort of the caliber detail there. Colt 45 Auto. What's that bit called? I know it's kind of the exposed part of the barrel, but the bit that is exposed, if anybody knows, so that I don't have to go on the computer and research it. What's that bit, that specific bit of the barrel called? Again, I wish it were etched into there. I wish it was cut into the metal. Rather than kind of laser printed. Maybe it's not laser printed, but that's what I'm going to call it. Rear sights wise, again, standard. No white dots, front or rear. But I like the challenge and authenticity of that. When I'm shooting a gun like this, I like that. And actually, I don't struggle to get a sight picture with that. I never have. I quite like it. They work as sights. So there you go. That's the front, that's the top, that's the left-hand side. Let me give you the right-hand side. Again, there's not much to say here, as true to form. All the sort of action on a classic 1911 like this happens on the left-hand side. Mag release and safety, etc. But again, we have all the appropriate markings, and again, those wood grips. Round to the rear, you've got your working grip safety. As expected. So for those of you who are new to 1911 style pistols, when we are racked like that, we have a number of safeties. We have the slide safety, and we have our main safety, which is keep your finger off the trigger. But also, even with the slide safety disengaged, that trigger will not, the hammer rather, will not drop unless you have a firm grasp on the pistol and that rear grip safety is engaged, at which point the hammer is allowed to drop. So that works very nicely, and there's a nice firm spring on that. You've probably heard me complaining in the past about my my gorgeous SIG Emperor Scorpion, but that's a bit of a flimsy spring there. I'm sure it's probably easily changed, but most of the time I've got bigger fish to fry than putting a slightly stronger spring and a grip safety. Again, at the back, we've got that kind of serrated mainspring housing. Nothing at the front there, and I quite like that. Again, I like that, the smoothness of hold to that. But when we look at the hammer, on first inspection, it looks kind of similar to that of the 1911 A1. It looks pretty similar when they're lying down. It looks quite similar when they're up like that. But actually, on closer inspection, it's trimmed so that it's kind of flush all the way across the trigger. If I hold this other one for you, this is the Colt 1911 Classic, and this is the A1. You can see that it broadens on the A1, or on the RAC as Remington call it. So yeah, slightly different pattern in terms of the etching on that trigger and the kind of the lines or the serrations or the etching on the Classic. So slightly different, but nice and solid, and works just as you'd expect. One notable difference with the Colt Classic is it does feature a half-cocked position. That position there, which you don't have on the Emperor Scorpion. There's no half cock there. It's the full or nothing. It's full or nothing. There's no half cock position. Similarly, on the RAC or the A1, there's no half cock position. It either locks back or it doesn't lock back. So I think that's quite a nice detail. Although perhaps it's a redundant detail on the air pistol. Obviously, on the real steel, for those of you who know, this position exists so that the gun can be made safe. If there's a bullet in the chamber, it exists to kind of prevent the hammer from striking the firing pin, and then therefore the primer on the back of the bullet. So I'm not sure why else you'd want that half-cocked position. I'm suitably informed that you wouldn't carry on half-cock. You'd be carrying locked and loaded like that. But I like the fact that it's there. I like the fact that that half-cock is there because it makes it a more credible replica, in my opinion. You can't drop the hammer with that. You can't bump it shut or anything like that. So I think it's a nice touch. Once again, well done, Umarex. Underneath, we have some tastefully done kind of airgun, let's get it the right way around for you, airgun caliber information there again, so it doesn't spoil the kind of the caliber information on the gun itself. You know, that all looks authentic, caliber .45 or 45, whereas we actually have the actual information here, 4.5mm or .177, and we have a little S in a circle here, which denotes that this is a BB gun. I guess the S stands for steel, and we have the F there, which means frei or free, frei in German, denoting that the airgun fires at an energy level which is below 7.5 joules. What else is there? Again, no rails underneath, which personally I am a fan of. We do have that classic lanyard loop there for your replica pleasure, and the trigger guard itself is a very classic non-frilled affair with again fantastic authentic single action only trigger. Even on these air guns, that single action trigger is still my favorite. I love that. The stippled trigger is kind of similar to that on the A1, but mine feels, I don't know, slightly more aggressive. I don't know if it's just the look of the draw or if it's I don't know, a new one off off the press or what. But yeah, a good trigger, decent amount of grip on it. Yeah. Okay, so let's have a look at our magazine. Now, this is a slightly redesigned magazine by Umarex or by KWC. Let me show you. This is the one from the Remington and from the Emperor Scorpion, which is a SIG, but again, it's a KWC gun. We have the magazine there. Now you can see, apart from that perhaps faux extension there, you can see that these are the same magazine. We've got these little circular indents there, and all the way around. They are pretty much identical, other than this has a nice function of the spring locks back, and there's a cutout circle there for you to load your BBs. The 1911 RAC doesn't have that function, but this new one is slightly different. You can see that the indents aren't there, and you can see that the cutout for the CO2 is a slightly different shaped window. I think it's a different valve assembly also. It looks like a different one. If you hold those two together, and then we hold the Emperor Scorpion one, it looks like a different seal and slightly different materials perhaps being used there. So not identical. Also, one thing that I noticed, much to my dismay, let's see if I can open this with these ridiculous black gloves on. Whose idea was it to wear ridiculous black gloves while you're making a video? Mine, and I don't care. This screw here that we undo to pop our CO2 in, what I noticed is when you've got a CO2 bulb in there, a 12 gram CO2 canister, and you tighten this up, by the time the CO2 bulb is pierced, this is long enough that it still protrudes from the bottom. And if I put that in the gun like that, I don't like that. If I wanted something to protrude from the bottom, I'd want a tab, like on the Colt Special Combat, and then at least I can tighten it without having a separate tool. If I'm using a separate tool, I want that to go all the way away so that it actually looks like a proper pistol when it's ready to go. Now, you could say, well, I'm splitting hairs, but it doesn't do it on the Remington, and that's been around for donkey's years. It doesn't do it on the SIG Emperor Scorpion. So why have the wrong piece there, or why have a piece that's too long there? I don't know. What I do know is that's easy to change. So I'll be swapping that out in the very near future. Another little bugbear or glitch, in my opinion, is I like the fact that if you look here, it's got a good something to get hold of, a decent bit of chunky metal there to get hold of, and I do like the fact that they've got this cutout for your BBs, but it doesn't lock back. There's no way to lock this back while you're loading your BBs, which is a shame. I mean, it's not the end of the world to hold it back, kind of back here while you load your BBs in, but bearing in mind, they've already got this one for the Emperor Scorpion that does lock back, and you can load your BBs in. Why on earth wouldn't you do that in a more modern pistol, in a more modern, make? When you've made these changes, don't then lose the improvements that you've already made. So again, I'm being pedantic, perhaps, but it's kind of a quality of life thing that I think it doesn't really make sense to have lost that, really. Anyway, I'm over it. So let me get this back together. Again, it's a big improvement on something like the Remington with all that crazy white writing there. It's white writing, but it's a lot better done. It's the right white writing at the very least. This one goes with this, and this one goes with this. And I'm sure some of you have already started to ask questions in your own mind, or you're typing them already in the comments around kind of cross compatibility. So I'll come to that a little bit later on in the video. At the business end, how does it shoot? Well, it's a very powerful, nice, snappy kind of blowback to it. You can expect to get 3 to 4 convincing mags worth of shooting before you notice a sharp decline in power, which is nothing new. That's pretty consistent across all these 1911 style pistols, the KWC ones. It's accurate up to about 5 meters, I would say. And I would say, actually, in my experience, these are pretty accurate for air guns. Pretty accurate, not for air guns, for BB guns that shoot kind of spherical steel BBs. You know, they're not shaped to be as accurate as a pellet, and you don't have the rifled barrel either. In fact, while we're on that, let me give you some statistical information. I'll put up the claimed feet per second and the size and weight and so on and so forth here while I chat. I think they claim around 330 feet per second, something like that. It can vary. It can go from kind of 300 up to 330 if you get yourself a good day. But it's plenty powerful enough to send something downrange at a Coke can, at a paper target, a zombie target, whatever you've got up down there. And on top of that, you've got the full functionality. You've got all of that blowback. You've got this slide that will lock back after the final shot. And for me, for the benefit of having the whole package, I don't need it to be any more powerful than that. And I actually don't need it to be any more accurate than that. You can have a lot of fun with these, and you're not going to be spraying things left, right, and center. You are going to hit the target where you're aiming, if you're aiming properly. If you've got a decent sight picture, if you're holding the gun properly, you will hit what you are aiming at. In fact, mine seemed to, power-wise, it kind of seemed to warm up after maybe the after the second mag. The third and fourth seemed to shoot harder and a lot louder than the first two mags before the performance started to dip. So I don't know, maybe the canister was just venting more at that point. Maybe at some point the hole where it was pierced had broadened and it was allowing more CO2 through. So it's idle speculation, isn't it? So it's kind of a bit of an old dog with a couple of new tricks, a couple of new changes, an updated version of the other KWC 1911s, or a reskinned version of the other KWC 1911s. It bears more than a striking resemblance to the Springfield Armory mil-spec 1911, which is another KWC variant, which I haven't been able to get my hands on, which is why I was so keen to get my hands on this. Very similar in a number of ways. But there are some other differences which become clear when you kind of field strip the gun or take it down. So let me do that. I'll take my magazine out and we'll push that slide back. Again, get it to the right notch there. It came out nice and easily. And off comes our slide. Let's do the same thing. Let me do this. Let's keep my housekeeping good. Let's do the same thing with the Remington. Let's get that back there. Out pops him. Slide gun. Yeah, let's make it a pretty picture, shall we? Slide gun. Okay. So the first thing I noticed when taking it apart was that the slide catch is ever so slightly different. You can see that this is a kind of single piece of metal, whereas on the other ones I have, there's always this kind of brass kind of sleeve here on the slide catch. So that's a difference. I don't know what difference, if any, that makes to the kind of the functionality of the gun. The only thing that does maybe concern me, although not greatly, is you can see that the one on the Remington looks like a slightly more substantial chunk of metal at this end. That's quite a thin piece of metal compared to that. So I don't know, it might be just as robust on the 1911 Classic as it is on the Remington, but only time will tell. Let's move our lower frames out of the way just for a second. And have a look at this. So if we continue to take the pistol apart, let's take him out of there like that. Try and keep everything together so that we can see what we're doing. There we go. And we'll look at these kind of components in isolation, if you will. Bear with me while I do the same thing for the Remington. A bit quicker there because it's obviously a bit more used. So yeah, what we notice here is that there's no barrel spring in the new one, in the classic, in the new one that we're reviewing today. So there's a barrel spring here in the Remington, and there is in every other KWC 1911 that I've got, be that the Swiss Arms TRS, the Emperor Scorpion, the We the People by SIG. This is the first that doesn't have a barrel spring, so that blowback function relies entirely on the recoil spring. Makes no difference, it's still a nice strong blowback, and everything gets back into place as it should. It's just a slight difference that I thought you might want to know about. The barrel assembly itself is, as you can see here, just ever so slightly different design. Let's just get rid of that here. Slightly different. So they've obviously gone, let's either make that cheaper, or let's improve it, or something. Even the barrel bushing is ever so slightly different. Feels a bit more substantial here on the Remington, and it doesn't have these cutaway pieces here and here like the 1911 Classic. And the recoil guide on the new one, for some reason, has these teeth, and I don't know. Maybe you can enlighten me as to why they exist. I've got no idea, because they're not on the other ones. Usually you get this and you get a washer or two, but it's a smooth piece. Whereas, as you can see on this one, it's got these strange teeth. I wonder if it's something that had some functionality in an airsoft version or something, and they've just used similar bits or similar components. Really don't know. So let's get these bits out of the way. Ooh, I'm losing things off the table here as we speak. Let's put these up here just for now, and look at the lower frame of both. Again, apparently very similar look, kind of almost identical apart from the finishing on both, but they do have slightly different bits, or they've been made in slightly different ways. We can see on the Remington, we've got this full-length slide, kind of slide grooves or troughs or rails, if you will, for the top slide to move up and down. On the Classic, that's kind of lost here. We've got it full length on the one side there, but this side we've got a little bit at the front, and then a little bit here just above the kind of the grip, the safety, just by the hammer. So that's a difference. Again, I don't think it would make a difference to the functionality of the gun. I think there's plenty to grab hold of there, but it's interesting that they've kind of removed a chunk of that metal. What else can I tell you? At the back here, it looks like perhaps a more robust piece on the new 1911 Classic than this piece here, as part of the sort of the hammer function, or the hammer assembly, if you will. Actually, something I forgot to mention about the slides themselves. You can see here, or I hope you can see here, that when we look here towards the sort of the slide catch and on all that sort of takedown area here, again, the metal goes from being quite thick here, just like the Remington, to becoming really quite thin on those kind of recessed rear slide serrations, and very thin here. And it looks even like it's reinforced or something for some reason, perhaps because of that thinness of that part of the slide. Whereas on the Remington, there's no real need. It's the same thickness all the way down. It's just it's an unusual decision in my mind. I can't think why you would jeopardise the integrity of that just to build it up again with an extra piece of metal there. So I don't know them. I'm not an engineer. I don't make these things. I know very little. I keep saying I'm just an enthusiast. I'm not an expert. But interesting little details. Interesting to me, at least, and possibly, potentially interesting to you. Of course, the most upsetting bit about all of this is that up until this gun came out, the Classic, the parts for these KWC 1911s were largely interchangeable. You could switch around barrels, you could switch around slides, and all the magazines worked in all of the guns. So if you had 3 guns, you had 3 magazines for your favourite of the 3. And it was easy to buy spare magazines because it didn't matter who they were branded as, Swiss Arms, KWC, Umarex, or whatever. They were all the same. They were all compatible with all of the guns. But actually, that's no longer the case, it would seem. You know, if I took this slide from the new one, from the 1911 Classic, that, you can tell by the end of it, it's got this extra notch here. It's not going to sit properly. It's a different shape. It's not just going to sit properly if I were to put it into the Remington. It doesn't engage properly at this back part. Sorry, that was terrible. It was off camera, wasn't it? It kind of, it'll go in, but that's not right. It's not proper, and it doesn't fill me with confidence. I don't like putting things together if it doesn't feel like they want to be together. Again, the other way around. If I took the Remington barrel and put that in the 1911 Classic, it doesn't like it. There's no, it doesn't move, it doesn't kind of sit home, if you will, which is a real shame. And actually, that's just dawned on me now. It's going to be perhaps more of a struggle to swap out the barrel and put a silver one in the Classic. I may well just have to polish it, or just leave it as is, I suppose. And when I first got the guns, the magazines appeared to be interchangeable. I managed to successfully get the Remington magazine in the Classic, and I got the Classic magazine in the Remington. They kind of sat differently, but they seemed to click home and true effectively. But once I'd got them loaded up and I tried to do the same thing, they didn't want to go into each other's guns. There were BBs falling out or spilling into the barrels. Maybe it was just me. Maybe it was just me being a bit cack-handed, and you have better luck than I did. But I don't think they're interchangeable magazines, which again is a great shame. So let me get these guns back together again. Shall we do it on camera? Yeah, let's do it on camera. Okay, so we're going to pop our barrel back in our slide there. We'll get him in there. We'll put our little barrel bushing on there. We will get, stay there you, get this into place like that. Really surprised, well, not really surprised, it's not the end of the world, and it's not going to change the world, but it's unusual that they don't have the extra additional spring on the barrel. I wonder why that is. Perhaps somebody who works at Umarex would like to get in touch and tell me. Or maybe one of you guys know. Let's just get that in place. I don't like to go from above because you end up scratching things up. There's the sweet spot. There you go. Lovely. If you bear with me, we'll do the same thing again for the Remington. Let's get him in there like that. Let's get our bushing on. For me, half the pleasure of owning these guns is taking them apart and putting them back together and just mucking about it. I find it quite soothing, if I'm honest. Don't judge me. I just do find it quite, I've said it before, find it quite zen. It's a nice tactile pursuit, let's call it that. Let's get just beneath that notch. There we go. Good. Okay then, to summarise, after a Rather long review and video, although I did say it was going to be a deep dive, didn't I? It's a great gun with great lines. For me, you can't improve on the shape of a 1911. I think anyone who hasn't got an air pistol, a replica air pistol, or any air pistol, this would be an amazing gun to own. I'm going to say it one more time, if you only ever bought one, this would be a great one to own. You can't go wrong with these full metal, full functional, field strippable, blowback, CO2 powered KWC 1911s. It's everything you want from an air gun, and it's more than that if you love the design of the 1911 anyway. It's a great collector's piece, even if you're not that into shooting. And it's a great drill gun for anyone who wants to save money on ammunition. It does everything that your real steel will do. And it feels punchy enough in your hand to give you some idea of how the gun is going to feel when it recoils. Better probably for, as I said before, things like holster draws and things like that, and building up your speed, if that's what you're into. I do love this black finish on the pistol. I wish they'd make a blued one. I'd love to have a kind of a blued 1911, although I have a problem with some of the blued air pistols we see, like the Colt Single Action Army. They sometimes just look a bit like a kaleidoscope, or like they've been dropped in a puddle of oil. So I'd like a subtly well-blued air pistol. It'd probably cost about 500 quid, so you can work on bringing that down in price, Umarex. I'm not sure this paintwork will stand the test of time, but I'm actually looking forward to seeing it weather a little bit naturally. This was my kind of go-to. If I just want to do any shooting, I bring out the Remington. I bring out the 1911A1 and shoot that. And that's been the workhorse for some years now. I kind of would like to get another one of these because I really like it. I quite like the mainspring housing at the back, slightly enlarged. But I do like the clean look of the classic 1911 here. Anyway, I digress. So that was my main workhorse. I think this is going to be my primary shooter from here on in. I just like it. I like, again, the challenge of not having the white dots and the more traditional lines of the pistol. Real wood grips with that accurate kind of double diamond pattern. As I said before, that could be treated or varnished. Yes, it's got white writing on it, but all in the right place, and at least it's a Colt. I do wish it was etched into that slide so that it could be darkened a bit more easily. I also appreciate the fact that the airgun intro is kind of unintrusive and featured just below the trigger guard there. I think that's a nice touch. Yeah, I would prefer a silver barrel, but I think maybe I'm just not going to touch that now because things just don't seem to want to fit in place across the different guns. In summary, this is a really great gun, and now I think it's definitely time for me to reevaluate and maybe revisit the video I'd made a few months ago. Which of my 1911s is the best? Which is my favourite? Food for thought, but maybe that's for another time. In the meantime, thanks for watching. Appreciate you being back. Take care, stay safe, all the very best.